Got 152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
That's dirt.
Yo. Welcome in, friends and golf fans, to the Preferred Lines podcast. My name is Joe Idoni. At Tour Picks is the place you can find me on X. And welcome. It's a pleasure to be your host for tonight. As always, we are going to spend the next hour, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, talking everything that's happened in the week in professional golf, recapping a little bit of the 27th PGA Tour win of Rory McIlroy's career, an epic Sunday there in Pebble. We'll shift gears a little bit, provide some course historical data and stats. I'll let you into my stat model this week for TPC Scottsdale, and then my guest is going to help me dish out some picks for the WM Phoenix Open. It's the biggest party of the year in golf. No other place I'd rather be than with you guys on Monday night. Thank you so much for being here. As always, this show proudly supported by the good folks over at Rotoballer PGA. The team over there is doing fantastic work once again. Ian McNeil has his course preview out. Matt Miller's doing stuff for the Live event this week. Spencer, of course, has everything you need to know and more from a DFS perspective. The Ranking Wizards is out in my top 10. Power rankings for the week are also out. The promo code, if you'd like to be a part of the team, we'd love to have you, is LINES, LINES, all caps. That'll get you 10% off any monthly, weekly, or annual sub over there. As always, thanks to the Rotoballer team, proud presenting sponsor of Preferred Lines. Okay, without further ado, welcoming back into the show one of the most insightful people I think in the industry, has incredible perspective, and looks great on screen. As always, welcome to the program. Hello, good evening, Sia Nejad. How are you?
What's up, Joe? Thanks for having me on the show. I'm doing well. I was just talking to you pre-show about your TGL experience and just all the cool things you get to do. You know, I moved from South Florida to the DC area about 1.5 years ago, and I miss it in several different ways, but it would be cool to kind of just stumble into the TGL building and, you know, not that I could do what you're doing necessarily, but just being there as a spectator or you know, in your capacity, it would be super cool. So congrats to you for being able to do that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, man. Wesley says hello to you as well. See, I know you've got a loyal following. Hopefully some of those people can come over here and check out this show.
Yeah.
Big week for you with Super Bowl and all that stuff going on. And I know you have a ton of content on tap for this week. So appreciate you taking some time to join me. Pebble Beach, I thought was awesome. There are going to be complaints about the long coverage. I thought the CBS did a fantastic job. We got the full complement and spectrum of weather at Pebble over the weekend. What did you make of the weekend that was for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am?
So I wasn't expecting Rory to come out like he did and just, you know, I don't want to say he dominated. I mean, but it felt like he did, or at least his game was just in such good shape. I remember watching on Thursday, it might have been Friday morning. Oh, we got Jeff and Nick in here. That's great. And I remember I was talking to my co-host on my DC show, Meg McDonald, who covers golf and is actually a good golfer herself, by the way. And I was like, man, Rory looks dialed in. And I'm not a Rory guy. I'm not usually picking Rory. His odds are generally too short for me. And in that moment, I really felt like, hey, maybe I should have taken a look at the live number and bet it. But I never got around to it. I was, and I'll get to my reaction about Rory and everything else in a second. I had a very small card. It was Cantlay and Morikawa. And then I had two long shots that were just really just sprinkle bets for me. And I'm trying to remember, it was Tom Hoagie and it might've been Lee Hodges. Long story short, like those guys were underwhelming, which kind of gets into my recap of the event. I feel like there's some guys that are kind of up and coming that are starting to see themselves inside the top 20, inside the top 10. Like looking at the leaderboard right now, I think Taylor Pendrith is a good example of that. Like a guy that's like really emerging and starting to play consistently well and finding himself somewhere atop the leaderboard. Tom Kim, a guy who obviously has been there before, but he seems to be a guy that's like really trending in the right direction. I only bring him up and guys like Rory so that I can contrast it with some of the guys who just really aren't showing up. I mean, it's not like the metrics are bad. It's not like they're playing horribly, but especially with the live guys kind of moving over, we expected, or at least I expected, guys like Cantlay, Morikawa, Justin Thomas. And I understand there's lulls in everybody's game, right? But I expected guys of that caliber to really start not necessarily winning, but like being there Sunday afternoon and like charging, and it's interesting and kind of ironic that who do I see charging? What 2 weeks ago I had a 55-1 on Sam Stevens as a live bet, Friday morning. And like this is the guy that's 4 under and who probably could have won if his approach on 18, didn't just trickle into the water. Like, and that's the thing. Like some of these stars aren't really seizing the moment, and some are like Rory, but it's just interesting to see that contrast because I'm seeing Sepp Straka able to close. I'm seeing Sam Stevens grab the bull by the horns. I'm seeing Taylor Pendrith play well. Tom Kim, like where are these other guys?
I know. And, I'll take it on the chin. I've knocked Rory in the past for maybe a perceived inability to close, but there's no denying 27 PGA Tour victories. And when you look at the short list of players who have been able to get to 20-25 wins, none of them are still doing it right now, Sia. And that's what makes Rory the player of what I would consider to be my generation, because he's got the historical data. He's got the major championships. He's got 27 PGA Tour wins. And when you look at those other guys who have been in that category, none of them are in like the top 500 of the OWGR. Rory's still number 3. And I think even Shane Lowry, they asked him about this post round one day. And he was like, it's amazing the level of consistency of Rory. He was like, I can think of when I first started playing with him and met him 12, 15 years ago. He was a top 5 player in the world. He was a top 5 player in the world 5 years ago. And now he's maybe one more good finish away from taking that number 2 spot from Xander Schauffele. He's inching ever so closer. When you think about the career of Rory McIlroy, what's like the iconic moment for you of his career? And there's an obvious one, but what do you think he's got left to do in the game?
I think he's got a lot left to do. The reason I chuckled at your ask was the first thing I thought of, unfortunately, was like the negative. Was what he did on, was it 17 and 18 in the was it the US Open? Forgive me
US Open, right?
Yeah, like that. For some reason, that's what I think of because we want him to be the major winner, and that's something that I think the perception is he's sort of fallen short of. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess that's not a very good answer to your question, and maybe you do a better job answering that in the positive way, because I, just like you, haven't really necessarily been a Rory guy, but I got to give him credit because some of these golfers, they kind of come and go, and then when they go, they're still around, but they never really soar back up. The one thing about Rory is like I'll get on him about a lull, like an 18-month lull or something like that. But then boom, all of a sudden he's like back on top, not Scotty Scheffler territory necessarily, but sort of in that hemisphere. So I got to give him credit because the other part of your question was, where do you think he's headed? Like, I think Rory's headed to a really great place. I think his game is in a really great place. And especially if you're talking the PGA Tour and majors, which of course some of these other live guys will be there for, I think this guy's ready to contend in a big way in all of that. So, and again, noting some of these other guys that I thought were going to be his competition. Let's go down the list. Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Patrick Cantlay. I mean, the list is long of what I thought was going to be contenders in that arena. I think Rory's ahead of all those guys. I think he's going to stay ahead of all those guys in terms of being consistent about it.
Yeah, and obviously the one step left for him is all eyes have always kind of been on Augusta National for Rory McIlroy. I think this was a very positive step because he notoriously starts slow, and it's almost, he's almost writing that chapter himself because he skips the Hawaii swing. He plays a very limited schedule. Even though he lives here in Jupiter, he doesn't play a whole lot in Florida in those initial events leading into the Masters. And it's kind of shown in the results leading in, and then all of a sudden you expect him to just turn it on 1 week in April. This was a very positive step for him to just kind of knock off that early season win. He's now headed in the right direction because you look at like someone like Scotty and what his lead in has been in the Masters the last couple of years has been very different from the lead in for Rory McIlroy. Mm-hmm. So I think when he says things like I want to be a little bit more like Scotty and avoid bogeys. I also think he's talking about taking the 2 months leading into the biggest tournaments of the year and what matters a little bit more seriously. The other thing I noted from Rory, really solid wedge play. And when you look at him, that's always kind of been his knock. And I thought that he was very good in that department at Pebble. Obviously, he was able to dismantle the course with his driver, which we expected. But the wedge play was just A+, I thought, this weekend. And this may be the most complete version of Rory McIlroy that I can remember.
It's interesting, too, because, part of the reason I didn't take him last week, well, for one, we hadn't seen him really, but also it's not really a driver heavy course, right? I mean, skill set wise, it's like, yeah, of course he can play well. I'm not saying he's going to play bad, but I don't think he's going to win. I mean, this isn't necessarily the course for him, especially coming in relatively cold. So with that in mind, I mean, it kind of makes the argument for Rory that much cleaner, because if he's doing that at Pebble, imagine when he does have the advantage pulling driver out like he can and like he does on these driver heavy courses. So that, again, things are looking pretty bright for Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, a couple more notes from Pebble that I had. Just, Shane Lowry, I thought played very well, was a great course fit for him. Some of those European Tour guys, or European players with eyes on the Ryder Cup, between him, Straka, Rose, all finishing in the top 4, was certainly a positive sign for them. I wanted to ask you, I've kind of spent the last 6 months or so harping on slow play and pace of play is a problem for the PGA Tour. I feel so much now like it's caught so much steam mainstream, like they're even talking about it on the CBS coverage now. That maybe it's been overblown a little bit and the pendulum has swung too far. But when they mention things, Sia, like they put Tom Kim's group on the clock, Colt knows it. What does that even mean, on the clock? If you're never going to penalize it, what does it matter if you're actually on the clock? Do you think this is a problem that the Tour needs to address sooner rather than later? Or do you think these moments of releasing data on how long they take to hit a shot and trying to shame them almost a little bit on the coverage is going to be effective in getting this thing to pick up maybe and shave 15 to 30 minutes off your watch time over the weekend?
So what's interesting, because you came to that sort of concluding thought right there with like your watch time. Like me, as primarily a golf bettor, I don't really care that they take long. Like, I think that's just me. Like, I understand the frustrations with everybody else, but so me personally, I don't care. But I think, to answer your question, when ratings are down across any sport, whether they are, currently this is not just a golf thing with respect to ratings, right? The ratings are down in the NBA. The ratings are down here, there, everywhere, MLB. Typically you do have, I don't want to say knee-jerk reactions, but you have some introspective stuff that go on, inside, at a high level, like, hey, how do we get the ratings up? And a lot of times, the ideas in terms of getting the ratings up are complete misses. Like they're not really appreciating what the actual problem is. But in this case, I could see some actual, and listen, I'm not on the inside of like any of this, right? But I could see a reaction being like, yeah, we are going to have to put these guys on the clock if we're just seeing consistent violations, whatever a violation might be, because if they think the ratings are potentially down as a result of that, then that's just going to be the reaction. But to be honest with you, I think this is not going to be a problem, quote unquote, that's going to be addressed anytime soon.
Yeah, you're right. Everyone wants to talk about the ratings being down and everyone kind of has a solution for that, but it's kind of across the board. And I think it's a product of maybe a lack of stars right now. I also think there's different ideas in the room. Like, I was at TGL and I asked Justin Thomas and Patrick Cantlay about it, and they didn't really have an idea of how to fix something like this, but they wanted the players to be more personable in the media. Thomas released a letter. Interestingly, Charlie Hoffman, I don't know if you saw, wrote a letter that kind of, leaked to the fellow tour members. And this is some of the things that Charlie said. I was interested on your opinion of this, but I kind of felt like it was shots fired at JT and at Cantlay, and especially at Rory. But here's something to think about. If we truly care about strengthening our tour, we should be supporting as many PGA Tour events as we can. Rory McIlroy, who elected to tee it up the first time. Many of you keep saying you want to play fewer events, yet you find time for TGL. You find time for the race to Dubai, which Rory went to. Other non-PGA Tour events. and that's going to continue regardless of field size. So he's kind of speaking for the Gen Pop of the PGA Tour and saying, look, you big guys that have all these ideas, how about you step up and play the Cognizant? How about you show up to the Sony? How about you come to Waste Management this week, which is the biggest party of the year? It's no longer a signature event, but that doesn't mean that you can just take the week off for when you say you need schedule and it's a timing issue, but then you commit to all these other things. It makes it look like you're sort of trying to play both sides of it. What did you think about what old Chucky Hoffman said and kind of calling out some guys?
I think it would be a better point if a lot of those guys were like going overseas. I mean, you're closer to TGL than anything. I don't think like the TGL events aren't like this taxing thing. I mean, yeah, you have to, a lot of these guys have to fly there. Some of, obviously based in that area, but it's not like you're going out there being like, feeling like you just went through 4 days of playing golf. So, I mean, I understand, playing on the European tour and things of that nature, but I feel like it kind of falls flat for guys that are not named Rory McIlroy, for example.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with Charlie. I think that a TGL is different. It's not trying to compete with the PGA Tour in any way. Yes, you can say that the commitment of showing up a Monday night in Palm Beach and having to get to a PGA Tour event could potentially impact schedules a little bit. That said, Rory played Monday. He won at Pebble. Tom Kim played Monday. He finished like fourth in the event. So it clearly didn't have too much of an impact on them in that regard. The other thing, I guess, just some other general golf topics that I wanted to talk about. Liv starts this week under the lights, which I think was a good idea for them if they're going to. Have you been betting Liv, Sia? Do you have any thoughts on it? Have you ever been to a Liv event? Is it something that you really cover too much?
I've never been to a Liv event. And honestly, I'd like to cover Liv from a betting standpoint. I just haven't made the time for it yet. Maybe this year will be like a different year. Like when I do, I haven't done my golf show yet. The one I do with CBS Sports, that's coming back at the end of the month, but end of February. Sometimes in those shows last year, like people would throw in, it's usually me on the betting show. It's me, Patrick McDonald and Eric Cohen. And at the end of the show, like they cover Liv, so that they'll throw in a couple of outrights, and I'll literally say like on the show, you know what, guys, I didn't really look at Liv, but I do know like the course, like here's a guy that you can take at like 18-1 or something. So no, I haven't really covered it. Can I ask you something though about TGL and growing the game? And again, I do want to get into Liv. I think there's a market for that, perhaps some betting opportunities there as well. Softer market, I should say. So the thing that really grabbed me with TGL, and the thing that I was like, oh, okay, there's a reason to me that this is exciting and that this can grow the game. And it's because, and this isn't me saying like this is true. This is me really asking you the question. The fact that these guys are mic'd up, I think is super cool. And for a game that lacks so much personality, just because of the nature of the sport, to hear and see some of these guys get excited. And granted, of course, not everybody's super exciting, and some guys are going to be quiet no matter whether they're mic'd up or not. But to get on the inside of some of these personalities that they're just more excitable in TGL. It's just like, it's like softer circumstances. And so like, I can hear Spieth and his caddy and all that, but like generally speaking on like a real like PGA Tour event, I'm not hearing a lot of like back and forth and excitement and funny quips and things like that. And people laughing at a bad Kevin Kisner shot or whatever. I think that's a really like not so subtle way to grow the game, because you start to get these personalities and you start to like, some of these guys are likable, some are not likable. Like that's what the PGA Tour needs is personalities and just identifying with some of these players.
Absolutely. 100% agree. The only thing is like, it's difficult for me because at first I thought it would be great if they could the coverage could turn this into like a reality show component to it, where they turn up the volume on these players' personalities and they make it like the cast of Survivor and everyone tells their story and kind of does it. But, I think at the end of the day, they have to be themselves. And some players have that in them, like Tom Kim, like Billy Horschel kind of came out of his shell. Like we saw Justin Rose kind of really playing it up very nicely. Like Tom Kim did it as well. Kevin Kisner, and other guys just don't have it. And you can't force it if you don't have it, because ultimately, like we talk about a lot, we're going to see through what is genuine and what is not, especially when we see these guys and how they interact week to week on a PGA Tour basis. Something's going to feel off when all of a sudden Cameron Young is mic'd up and, super chatty and entertaining and all that stuff. So I think it flirts the line there. Where I think it's really resonated and growing the game, to be honest with you, is with a much, much younger audience. I'm talking 10 years old to 25-year-old, because the attention span isn't there. It's a blend and a sort of cohesive experience of feels like a video game in real golf. It's 2 hours, check in and out. My son loves it. He's 8. Some of his friends really like it. I've talked to people that I know who are a little older than me, and they're like, it's not for me at all. But my 14-year-old son will watch it, and he won't watch golf on the weekend, but he'll sit there and watch TGL. So I think it's really kind of appealing to that audience. Coming back, kind of circling back to Liv, Phil had some interesting comments. I'm not sure you heard it, about why Liv's different and why we'll ultimately succeed. And I've kind of experienced that firsthand in what he said. And I don't think this is going to determine why Liv will ultimately succeed or will fail. But Liv is a very different experience for an 8 to 10-year-old kid, or for a parent taking his kids. I want to do stuff with my kids on the weekend. A PGA Tour event, when I go to the Cognizant Classic, is a big commitment for me. If I want to go Saturday and Sunday, I'm gone out of the house for 6 to 8 hours. That's the time I want to spend with my young boy. And to take him there, he hit the nail on the head. He's hot. He's tired. There's nothing for him to do. He's bored after an hour and wants to go home. And I'm kind of dragging him around these different holes to see a fraction of the action that he's able to get to see on TV. I took him to a Live event, and it was a much different experience for him. They really cater to kids. And I think that is a move that is interesting for them. I don't think it's going to ultimately determine whether the league succeeds or fails. But there's no doubt about it. If you talk to anyone who is taking young kids there, you don't feel the pressure of quiet down. These guys are hitting. There's stuff for them to do. There's mini putt courses. There's arcade games. There's it feels like a fair to a degree. They had a whole indoor section that was air conditioned where they were doing like science experiment shows. Like, it sounds insane. It's not what you go to a golf tournament for, but to be able to take your kids there and be in the AC for 30 minutes and have them watch a little magic show and then go back out and check out the course was a different experience. I took my wife too. She loved it. They had a Chainsmokers concert, and we were 5 rows back at the end of the tournament. She was like, this is unbelievable. Like, they were in American Airlines Arena 2 nights before, and tickets were $300 a piece, and it's just part of the golf experience. So it's very different. I think it's something that they do hit on. I think it's something that the PGA Tour could look introspectively and be like, what can we do to appeal to that generation? Not only the younger kids, appeal to parents, appeal to make it an event that they want to show up to. I love going to sporting events with my son and with my family. Whether we go, I've taken him to wrestling, I've taken him to basketball, I've taken him to football games. It's something that creating that experience and that bonding memory with him is something very cool that I like to do. And it's something that I felt like Liv did a better job of than the PGA Tour, which was a little bit interesting.
The sad thing about this, and I'm sure there's people on the PGA Tour smart enough to like basically just copy what Liv is doing, but like this stuff that Liv quote pulled off is like common sense, right? Like this should not be like, oh my gosh, they just like split the atom here. This is so groundbreaking. Like the PGA Tour should have been wise to this 10, 20 years ago. And that's okay that they weren't. Like, I mean, but figure it out now, right? Because what you just said was super enticing when it comes to going to a Live event with other people relative to the PGA Tour event.
Yep. And I'm golf hardo all the way. It wasn't for me. The competitiveness wasn't there, but casual fans, I think there is some appeal there. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about TPC Scottsdale. Let's preview the course for this week. Sia, I'm going to give you some of my notes that I have over the years that I've compiled from here. And if you have anything to add, by all means, would love your input. 1986 Tom Weiskopf design, 7,261 yards, par 71, 35 on the front, 36 on the back. Visually beautiful on TV. You get the bright pop of the Bermuda grass, like kind of blended in with the brown of the desert. Looks amazing. Obviously, the most electric, unusual, unique fan player event experience that we have on the PGA Tour annually. The defining moment besides the pressure that the cauldron can kind of bring into like a unique element to this, the defining mechanism of defense here is, I think, the water down the stretch. 7th largest greens on tour, typically lightning fast. Rory, it was interesting, kind of blasted the run-of-the-mill TPC courses, he said in his post-round presser last week. But this is honestly one of my favorites. The dramatic closing stretch of 15 through 18. Aggression is important here, but you cannot do so without diminishing control of the golf ball. Ranks near the top in terms of data golf rankings in predictive course history. Sneaky elevation here as well. Like, there's not a whole lot of up and down on the holes, but it plays at elevation, which allows shorter hitters typically to pack a little bit of extra, and a little extra pump off the tee. Off the tee, huge. A few years ago, 24% of strokes gained came off the tee. That's about 10% above tour average. Recent winners include Nick Taylor, Scotty Scheffler 2 times, Brooks Koepka, Webb Simpson, Ricky Fowler, Gary Woodland, and Hideki Matsuyama 2 times. Winning score typically between 15 and 19 under par, although Nick Taylor last year got it to minus 21 in a playoff with Chuck Hoffman, who we referenced earlier. Those are some of my basic notes on TPC Scottsdale. Do you have anything important that you're kind of adding in there as a special sauce this week?
Not really. I mean, aside from what you said, I agree with you on off the tee. I think approach play is obviously important, but I feel like I'm leaning towards more recent form when it comes to approach. That's just the only thing I'll add in. Like when I built a model, and I don't really lean on my models too much, but I have kind of a more long-term view on approach, but I also like really hyper focused in on last 24 and took a look at that. But yeah, off the tee approach, weighted tee to green was something I looked at. That's about it. I mean, it's interesting because there's so many different types of golfers that you see winning and in the top 10 of the leaderboard, over the last 4 or 5 years. So like different games can definitely get it done. But for me, I'm definitely leaning towards the off the tee guys, the distance guys, and guys that are hot on approach right now.
Awesome. Let me show you. I'm going to bring up now my stat model for the week and see if you have any sort of feedback on that for me, Sia. If you haven't checked it out yet, I know we got some new people. Love to see you guys in the chat. Keep that going. I'm sure Sia brought you along. We're happy to have you here. But if you haven't checked out BetSperts Golf, they have a rabbit hole feature. Tour picks, all caps, will get you 25% off your annual over there. I think it's the best software that I have ever seen in terms of stat modeling. And here are my top 10 for the week. Number 1, Scotty Scheffler. Surprise, surprise. Number 2, a bit of a surprise, Kurt Kitayama, who I think appeared in a lot of people's models out of nowhere this week. Sam Burns, Tom Kim, Billy Horschel, Matt McNeely, Doug Gim. We'll talk to you about Doug Gim a little later. See ya. Nick Taylor, of course, defending champion and winner this season. Hideki Matsuyama. Sung Jae Im in the top 10. You could see some of the stuff that I looked at here. Like I took a shorter term approach on ball striking here last 36 rounds there. Off the tee, I looked at driver heavy courses, so you can kind of factor that in. Strokes gained putting, last 50 on fast greens. I also looked just historically at TPC Scottsdale. Some of the other stuff I have in here is I think it's a big course for total driving, which is a blend, of course, of distance and accuracy. And then this is basically your distance from the edge of the fairway over the last 36 rounds. So we know you can't be too far. Accuracy, you cannot compromise at TPC Scottsdale, especially how the water lurks in there. Here's the top 10, for instance, in distance from the edge: Ben Coles, Tom Kim, Corey Connors, Lucas Glover, Sung J M, a lot of the familiar names there. And of course, that 150 to 200 yard range comes into play a ton at TPC Scottsdale, well above the tour baseline there. But that's my top 10. This is the rabbit hole, guys. The other cool feature about this is you can look at these expert rankings. So you can pull up my model at any time. Here's Andy Lack, Ryan Noonan, Matt Vincenzi, Steve Shermer, PGA Touts now in here putting out a model.
Nice.
So you get access to everyone else's model, which you can take bits and pieces from to work on kind of building your own. So a really good database that I would recommend to a lot of people. It's helped me out a ton this season. Have hit a couple winners so far. So been fortunate thanks to the Rabbit Hole Tour picks. All caps will get you that 25% off. Without further ado, Sia, let's bet the board. Okay, here are your odds to outright win the WM Phoenix Open for 2025. Scott Scheffler right at the top, plus 280. Good grief. Justin Thomas, 14 to 1. Hideki, 16 to 1. Sung J M, 22. Sam Burns, 25. Tom Kim at 30 to 1. Sia, I know that many books are offering the with and without Scotty Scheffler markets this weekend. Are you someone that is going to look to maybe exploit that, or are you more of a traditional put him in the field, juice up my odds a little bit more, and I'll take my chances?
By the way, we have a good amount of crossover in our top 10, which is probably should be no surprise, but I just wanted to point that out because I'm looking at mine as well. So it's a case-by-case basis for me on the without Scotty Scheffler market. When I see that Scotty came back in last week and looked really quite good after, quote, injuring his hand and thinking I was thinking he'd be like rusty for Scotty, which would be a little worse than what he actually was. And he was pretty dialed in, and he's won here twice, and it's been recent. This is one of those, when I say case by case, this is a case where I actually am betting the without Scotty Scheffler market because I do think he's going to win.
Okay. Who was your favorite pick of the top in that market, and what kind of price point did you get in terms of odds?
So what's interesting is because I'm looking at it now because the without market at the major books, I think it opened up first at BetMGM and it was just like 2 hours ago. I know FanDuel's going to have it. I'm pretty sure DraftKings is going to have it. So we're just going to have to wait for those to come out. The one I was looking for that I was like, and I hope I get a better number at another book, Sam Stevens. I know he's not on this page, but you asked my favorite, like in terms of like the actual value and the odds and all that. It's 50 to 1 in the without Scotty Scheffler market. I actually thought it'd be a little bit longer, so I'm waiting for those other books to open. That's my favorite. Now, of the guys on this board, I haven't bet any of them yet because, again, I'm waiting for the without Scotty Scheffler market to come out, and then I'll assess it across the books. But if I'm looking at this, the ones that jump out to me are just one, actually. I can't believe I'm saying it with actually two: Sepp Straka and Hideki Matsuyama. I think those are the two that really jump out at me. I mean, Hideki, the ball striking should be there. Off the tee is solid. If the putter gets hot, we know how he can absolutely dial in. I mean, he's just, among the golfers that I think can close this tournament, Hideki's certainly in that top three. Sepp Straka is just playing too well to ignore a number on 40 to 1. Now, without market, what does that number look like? I'm not sure, but we're talking about winners here. Like Tom Kim is certainly in the conversation as well at 30 to 1. I'll give him that. But like when it comes down to it, I don't necessarily expect it to the extent I expect JT and Sung Jae and Sam Burns to be there at the end. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but right now, guys like Sepp Straka, I think, are in that category of guys I expect to be there on a Sunday afternoon. And if I'm getting 40 to 1 versus some of these other guys that are better course fits, but have been somewhat underwhelming, I'll take the 40 to 1 versus the 12 or the 16.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore current form. And, many people did it with Sepp Straka last week. Hey, he won. How can he possibly win again? People have done it with Hideki too. It's this situation where you think the candle kind of eventually burns out, and that is the case to many degree. But when your guy's playing really well, you got to play him over someone who's not been playing really well. So Sepp Straka makes a great case. For me, I'm going to stand on those train tracks this week and leave Scotty Scheffler in the field for the outrights. If he burns me, he burns me. I'm fairly confident that will be the case 5 times this year, maybe more. But I'm just not willing. I'm not willing to bet him 3-1. I don't think that there's any long-term sustainability in taking those numbers week over week. Is this a great course fit? Yes. But this is also a great course fit for someone else who I think is trending on a path to a win and wants it, and that's Justin Thomas. 14-1. He thrives in this kind of environment. See, he loves the magnitude. He loves the stage to perform, as evidenced by his course history here. The last 5 years: 12th, 4th, 8th, 13th, and 3rd. Second in strokes gained total here over the last 5 years. Also second overall when I pulled data from just desert golf courses over there on BetSperts, which pulls about 40 rounds of data into there from Justin Thomas. Really good in that environment, as was showcased a couple of weeks ago with a second place at the Amex. Raises his baseline off the tee rather substantially on driver heavy courses. And when you factor in water, it goes up even further. I trust him around the greens. I know some of those splits have not been great on Bermuda short grass, but still top 5 hands and creativity around the green. And the difference to me, Sia, is he's figured out a putter setup that's working for him at the moment. Always his bugaboo. New Scotty Cameron put in the bag before the season. Gain strokes putting at the Century. Gain strokes putting at the Hero. Gain strokes putting at the Amex. Modest loss last week at Pebble Beach, but we know he kind of does not get along with those POA greens historically. Rolling report data looks very positive for Justin Thomas and trends with the short game overall. He's my pick to win this tournament. I think his time is now, and it's just in a moment before he capitalizes. And if Scotty wasn't in this field, I think Thomas would be the favorite at probably 8 or 9-1. So I'll leave him in there, take my chances, and get a few extra points. And let's gamble a little bit. It is Super Bowl week after all.
I don't mind it. I mean, obviously the putter has, and I'm looking at it now, like the putter has been pretty solid for Justin Thomas. We know the ball striking can absolutely be dialed in, although last week wasn't like amazing by any stretch. It's just every time I see a Justin Thomas or a Patrick Cantlay or Colin Morikawa up in that like 12 to 14 or 16-1 range, like I like it too. And then I just feel like, all right, this is just going to be a letdown. And there's some guy named Sepp Straka that's battling for first place. You know what I mean? But I get it.
100% get it. I wanted to ask you, there's a couple of guys right next to each other. I'm curious on your thoughts between, if you had to pick one of these two players. One is Sam Burns, fantastic course history here, and the other is Tom Kim, who played really good last week. I think they're two very different players. Surprisingly, Tom Kim's greens and regulation numbers have been a little bit down, well below Burns' number, in fact. But Tom Kim, second in driving accuracy, while Sam Burns is 81st. The dispersion between those two off the tee is particularly high with Burns, not so much with Tom Kim, but I do feel like Burns possesses that upside, and we've seen it here before. If you had to pick one of those two who you think is the better fit for a place like TPC Scottsdale in that 25 to 30-1 range, who would be your selection of those two players?
It would be Tom Kim. And to be honest with you, the 30-1 on Tom Kim, I actually quite like. I think that's I certainly think that's a bettable number. Like I'm looking at my model right now, which I kind of only like casually lean on. I have Tom Kim 6th in my model here, and I'm like scrolling for Sam Burns. Like he should be.
Yeah, he was 4th in mine. Kim was 4th.
Yeah, Sam Burns is kind of way down there. I'm embarrassed to say the number because you're going to be like, your model sucks. But Tom Kim, especially, I had some notes here on his recent approach play, and it's really, really good. I'm just like trying to like check my notes here. But yeah, Tom Kim, other than the putter, I mean, he's rating out really, really well for me. I don't really see a lot of flaws in his game. Yeah, last 24 approach, he's second in the field. Strokes gained TPC Scottsdale, like pretty solid, but I just like how the game is trending for Tom Kim. I like what I saw last week. And Sam Burns is one of those guys that I'm worried that, and I understand his history here, but I'm worried that Sam Burns is a mirage. And I feel like we're operating a lot on name recognition right now with a lot of players that are just not getting it done. And I feel like Sam Burns is in that category.
Yeah, Sam Burns, early in his career kind of earned a quick moniker of like this guy is a closer. I'm trying to see now. Sam Burns' last win, 2023 Dell WGC match play. So it's been almost 2 years. His last real 72 hole stroke play tournament that he won was the 2022 Charles Schwab. So it's been a little while for Sam Burns, on a guy who's normally at the top of the odds board, to kind of knock a victory. We're going on almost 3 years since he won a 72 hole tournament there. Moving kind of down the odds board a little bit. See, I know you mentioned that you like Straka. The Gala is there at 45-1 also, who's had tremendous course history here, but not the greatest course form. Were you one of the people, like myself, spoiler alert, who bet an early number this morning on Kurt Kitayama when he showed up like at the top of your model? Because he was second in my model. There was 80-1. I felt forced into taking it because I knew the number was going away. I'm a little bit worried the amount of people that I see on it at this point now. Down to 60-1. What do you think about Kitayama here?
Yeah, he was. I'm gonna double check it. He was second in my model. What's funny is I played him in a pretty important DFS lineup at the Farmers, and he missed the cut. He's another guy that he obviously profiles well here, but it's another guy that I don't know that he can actually get it done. I mean, I'm looking at his, fifth at the Zozo, T9 at Shriners, T6 at the 3M Open. This is impressive. Obviously, T8 last year at the WM Phoenix Open, and he rates out really high in my model. I'm just not buying it. But I will say, did you get the 60-1 on him, or did you get even a higher number?
It was 80 this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't obviously it's hard to hate on that number, given that he's also number 2 in my model behind Scotty Scheffler, which is ridiculous. By the way, Luke Clanton's number 3 in my model. And I don't know that I'm willing to bet that outright number, even though it's 65-1 looks great, but his first time here, I think he'll embrace the moment. I question his recent metrics as well. Like he's been a little off recently.
Totally.
I think Clanton's a guy that, after round 1, let's just assume he has like a middling performance, not good, not bad. I could see me like maybe making a live wager on him in like a top 20 or top 40 market. But I just wanted to bring him up because he happens to be behind my model as well. But I like Kitayama. I'm not betting him though.
The sort of like quantifiable element of this tournament is, can they win, do you think, in front of this crowd when the pressure's on? Are there anyone like in this range that you red line? Like I can see him. His numbers look great. I can't see him winning. Like maybe someone like Luke Clanton, who just doesn't have that experience. Like, is he built for the moment to win this tournament? When I ran down that list historically, I mean, you've got a lot of big closers there. You've got a lot of just really good players where the cream has sort of risen to the top at this event over the years.
Yeah, I mean, on this list that we're looking at now, like I don't know that I'd think that Matt Fitzpatrick would embrace that. I think Luke Clanton actually would kind of embrace this. I think he's going to have a lot of fun out there personally. I don't know about JJ Spawn or JT Poston when it comes to that. Nick Taylor clearly loves these moments, and he's such a closer. Like it makes sense based on the manner in which Nick Taylor wins tournaments. It makes sense that he loves this atmosphere. Billy Horschel's another guy that I think really embraces. I suspect embraces this atmosphere. As far as like cross offs, like I'm actually, it's funny because I'm looking at my model. It's hard to do. Like, here's one. What do you think about Florida? Is he Jupiter native too? What do you think about Daniel Berger and what he thinks about a Phoenix Open crowd?
I actually love Daniel Berger this week. I bet him 110-1. Spoiler alert on my long shots. It'll be out tomorrow. But I've got a little, I don't know, I don't want to reveal it, but I've got an inside source down here who plays at a club with, I think they have 48 PGA Tour players that belong to this club. And they have been telling me Daniel Berger has been tearing people apart.
Wow.
They say he's ready. He's fully back. He's super motivated right now. That has not come to fruition in some of the early season results, but I kind of think he's a dog, and I just think that he's waiting for his moment, whether it be at Phoenix, whether it be during the Florida swing when he gets back to the Cognizant where he's had some success, or the Arnold Palmer. But I think that Daniel Berger is built based on his stats profile, highly accurate driver, good approach player, can be a clutch putter when you really need to. I think that he's built well for these type of desert Bermuda courses, and he's one of the guys I have on that list. But you also mentioned Billy Horschel, another guy that I bet. 2 top 10s at this event since 2020. Great putter here, which is not always the most reliable. When you look at a guy who's gained 4.8 or better putting over the last 4 years at this event, in 4 starts, 4.8 or better. He's been fantastic here. Really good at the par 5 scoring metrics as well. T9 last week at Pebble, where he really surged up the leaderboard Sunday. Won the BMW PGA, T2 at the Open Championship. Plenty of dog in him and ready for the big moment. So props to him on getting a little better with the driver. Actually gained off the tee in 10 of his last 12 I have written down here. So Horschel's one that I'm looking at. And here's my sneaky one for the week, Sia. I got 70 to 1. Looks like right here I have him still at 66 to 1. I know the form isn't good, but I think that this is a really good spot for Akshay Bhatia.
Interesting.
T22, I'm encouraged by at Pebble last week. He's been getting better with the putter, and his last 4 PGA starts. Played the Grant Thornton and the Hero. You can kind of factor in there, but 4th, 3rd, 32nd, 22nd, he's not playing as bad as I think the main perception is of him. Genuinely really good putter right now. Gained in 9 straight. 2 of those were on super fast Bermuda greens at both the Hero World Challenge and the FedEx St. Jude. Some of the fastest greens on tour, which these are. And you look at where Bhatia has had success. He has crushed TPC courses that I think share a lot of similarities. 12th at TPC Southwind last year. 5th at TPC River Highlands for the Travelers. And when you look at TPC San Antonio, he, of course, got a victory there last season as well. So something about these TPC courses that reward aggression and birdie making, I think fits in line with Bhatia's style of play. And he's 70 to 1. And I think that he's the type of guy that will enjoy and kind of relish this type of environment and the opportunity to rise to the occasion.
What about Mav McNeely? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm not a guy that usually bets Mav McNeely, but I feel like he's being a little hidden right now because his putter over the last 4 tournaments hasn't been great, with the exception of 1 tournament. And it's been particularly bad over the last 2, which has led to T40 and T52 finishes. But his off the tee and approach play, recent play there, it's back. He's back in form. And we know he can get it done with the putter. We've seen, it's been a while in terms of the consistency with the putter. I think Matt McNeely's really interesting at this number, though. And by the way, T8 last year at the Phoenix Open.
Yeah, 60 to 1 currently. There are some 50s out there, so take advantage of the 60. If you see you have Nick Taylor there, if you still believe, we saw Sepp Straka just do it, back up a victory with another good performance on a course where he's set up really well. Not only did Nick Taylor win last year, finish 2nd the year prior. JT Poston is here. Cameron Young's at a big number. That's kind of one of the guys that I'm like, do I believe Cameron Young will eventually win? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen in this environment? No. Just not a great fit for him. See, what about give me one long shot pick, maybe a guy that we haven't mentioned yet, anything above 60 to 1, who's maybe your favorite pick this week?
I'll give you a few, 2 of which I will bet in some market, in not necessarily the outright market. Sam Stevens, I am going to bet in the not without Scotty Scheffler market. I like him.
Yeah, I like Sam
I
Stevens.
think Doug Gim is really interesting. And I think Andrew Novak has some major bust potential, but I think his upside is there. Those would be the 3 names that are in the long odds category, 100 to 1 or at least in that 100 to 1 range that I like. And of course, Charlie Hoffman too, who's also 100 to 1. I mean, it's hard to deny how Charlie Hoffman has been playing lately. He looks good. Good course fit too, in my opinion.
Your guy Jeff here is dying for us to talk about old Thorpe. Plus 350 in the top 20 market. Here's what I'll say, Jeff. I think that he's cheap Luke Clanton, which I've always said. He's discount Luke Clanton. I don't think that one guy deserves to be at massive odds. One guy deserves to be 55 to 1 and the other, when you go to Thorpe Georgeson, is 125 to 1. I don't think the gap between the skill level and those two players is that great. Decent number on a top 20. I'll have to look more in terms of the course fit and how I think that kind of dials in for him. But big number on a top 20 that's kind of tough to ignore based on where he's at on the odds board.
Yeah, he's been pretty erratic lately, but the talent is there. I feel like Thorpe Bjornsson, when we're talking about Clanton and Thorpe, it's like Clanton feels like he's so close, and Thorpe Bjornsson feels like he's still in project mode. You know what I mean?
Yep. I totally get it. Yeah, Thorpe, it seems like needs the right course fit for him. I had him at, I think it was the RSM, but he's going to get there one of these days. He's so talented and hits it plenty long that he'll be able to take advantage on a lot of courses. Sia, was a pleasure to have you join me this week. As always, what all do you have coming up this week for content, whether it be Super Bowl or PGA related?
Yeah, a lot of Super Bowl stuff. I do the early edge every morning on the Sportsline YouTube channel at 10. Outside of that, I mean, not, just HQ, sometimes on CBS Sports Network, got my By the Book show. As far as golf content, our golf show won't be coming around for another 2 to 3 weeks. And then you'll start seeing me post some links for my golf stuff as well. But that's called the early wedge. Outside of that, man, just if anybody wants to follow me, is some of these guys in the chat already do, just follow me at Sia Nejad, and I post kind of where I'm at all the time, but annoyingly so.
Yeah, me too. That's what we do. And the other thing that we both do that I always enjoy with you, and you kind of brought it up earlier, is not afraid to touch on some personal stuff and kind of let people that view our show into a little bit introspectively in terms of our lives and how we're feeling at the time, and like to kind of just lay it all out there. Like it's me and it's you, and it's the things that everyone I think can share in common and deal with. And while we can sit here and debate golf stuff, I think the importance of thinking of each other as people, and understanding that everyone's going through different things is something you have always embraced. It's something I've always appreciated about the work that you've done.
One thing I do want to mention, because Joe, I'd like to have you come on at some point. I do a Twitter space every third Thursday, like every few weeks we do it. And it's literally super casual Twitter space. Sometimes there'll be 15 people. Sometimes there'll be 30, 40. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of a tight knit group. We have a Discord where we kind of motivate each other and set goals and stuff. But the point is, sometimes in the spaces, actually oftentimes, I have a guest come in and basically just kind of tell their story for like 5 minutes, maybe answer some questions and talk about some of this goal setting and motivational stuff that, Joe, I know you're super familiar with. So one of these days, I'd like to have you come on again, just for like a 15, 20-minute commitment. You and I will have a back and forth. Some of the people that are in the space some of the people that are in the space are in this chat right now on a regular basis. They'll come in, they'll ask you a question, you answer it, just very, very basic stuff.
Would absolutely love that, man. It would be an honor, and I'm always open and try to be an open book on here and be as true as I can possibly be. So I appreciate that. We will absolutely make that happen. Sia, thanks for making this happen tonight. Good luck with your picks this week. Who do you got winning the Super Bowl?
I think the Eagles are going to win. I think they're just the better team. The Mahomes magic, I totally get it, but I think the Eagles actually grab this one.
Eagles got to be up by 9 in the fourth quarter. If they're within a score, I'm going to be a nervous, sweaty man in terms of sweating that out. But thanks so much again. Sia, best of luck this week. We'll talk soon, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right, talk later. Guys, thank you so much. Extremely active chat. So thank you all who came over here from Sia's page tonight. Appreciate you stopping by. This has been another episode of the Preferred Lines podcast. My full card will be out, of course, tomorrow or Wednesday. Actually, Wednesday. I'm all thrown off because I got TGL tomorrow. If you like some of the TGL content, I'll be there again tomorrow. Hope to ask some questions in the media center. Once again, if there's anything you want to hear from the players, let me know. Busy week ahead with the Super Bowl. Power Rankings article is out now. As always, check out all my stuff this week over with the good people at Rotoballer. Thanks for them for supporting the show. Thanks for you for checking this out. Make sure to like and subscribe on your way out of here. I'll catch you next time. Phoenix Open Week, baby. Good luck. Peace.